is joining us, you'll see, you'll be able to jump right in. Did I say the book of, did I say Esther or I said Ezra? Ezra, okay, fine, okay. So we'll see, it works out well time-wise, because we will have an opportunity to talk about the relationship of Ezra to Esther and comparing the different events. Okay, so just to review what's happened so far, the past few classes we've learned the first people have come back to resettle Yerushalayim and Yehuda, the area around Yerushalayim, and they built an altar, a Mizbeach, in the same place as the original Mizbeach without building any other part of the Beis HaMikdash, and they start offering sacrifices. But they've now encountered resistance. There are other people who are living there who have been forcibly moved, communities, not Jewish, not Israelite communities, other nations, and they also were living there, and they're upset that the Jewish people have built this altar and are starting to try to build the Beis HaMikdash, because that will be a way of them, demonstrating that this is their land and they're in control. Okay, so that's what we had. So that's what we had sort of just ended off with last time. Okay, so we're going to review the last few psukim that we read last time, and then we'll see how far we get. I printed, basically there's 3 prakim, valid hand vav here, more or less. At one time was, I was imagining that we would do all of it tonight, but maybe we'll see. Probably won't, but which is fine. But we'll see. We'll get more done, I think, than we have in the other classes. Okay, so let's begin. So I have here. Maybe I should always do this, but in particular, I want to make sure we have the Hebrew and the English, because we're going to enter a section of Aramaic. The part of Ezra is written in Aramaic, which is very difficult. So we all need the help with English on the side. So let's begin. So it's Daled. Vayhi am haaretz mirapim yedei am Yehuda. So again, the other people who are living there are weakening, trying to undermine the hands, the work of the people of Yehuda, the Jewish people. Umivahalim osam livnos. Again, they're trying to prevent them, to scare them from building anymore. Okay, this we learned. V'sochrim alehem yoatzim lahafer atzatam. And they are hiring advisors and agents to prevent them from fulfilling their plans. And they did this, Kol Yemei Koresh Melech Paras. Koresh Cyrus was the one who initially had given them permission. So even though they start in the beginning of the reign of Koresh, Ezra begins the year 1 of the reign of Koresh, but they seem to be stymied the rest of the reign of Koresh. Va'ad Malchus Daryavesh Melech Paras. And up until the beginning of the reign of Daryavesh, Darius in English, who was a later king of Persia. We'll see it will be the second year of Daryavesh when they rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, and that's an 18-year gap, because and that will bring us to the second set of 70 years. Okay. Uva Malchus Achashverosh b'tchilas Malchuso, and in the reign of Achashverosh, let's see. So let's just read the pasuk. Excellent question. In the beginning of his reign, Kasu Sitna al Yoshvei Yehuda Yerushalayim. They wrote letters of anger and hatred against the people of Yehuda and Yerushalayim to the Persian king. Meaning saying, we'll see in a minute examples of such letters, but saying, Achashverosh, whoever you are, King Achashverosh, you have to prevent this Jewish people over here. They're trying to build their own country. They're going to rebel and so forth. Yeah. So, okay, let's read one more pasuk and then we'll discuss it all. Ubiyamei Artachshasta. And similarly, in the days of Artachshasta, another Persian king, Katav, Bishlam, Mitridas, Tavel, these 3 people, those are Persian names, these 3 people, Ushar Kenavosav, and their colleagues, the way they translate it, Al Artachshasta, meaning to Artachshasta Melech Paras. They also wrote a letter. Now, here's where we now transition to Aramaic. Uksav Hanishtavan, and the script or the writing of that letter, Katuv Aramit, was written in Aramaic script. Umitorgaman Aramit, and was in the Aramaic language. I mean, it wasn't, because you could write one language, transliterate like in another language. So it's saying they wrote this Aramaic letter in Aramaic. That was one of the languages that you would use at the time. And then we're going to have a quote of that letter. So it's going to be in the Aramaic. So that's why we're going to transition to the Aramaic. Okay. So before we get to that, let's discuss these kings. Now, trying to figure out exactly who all these kings are and exactly the order in which they reigned is very complicated. Now, and we're not going to get too much in depth, but I want to discuss it a little bit. Now, Koresh for sure refers to the king who was recorded in sources totally independent of Tanach, named Cyrus. Koresh is Cyrus. Daryavesh is for sure Darius. Okay. Artaxerxes is for sure, however you pronounce it, Artaxerxes. Okay. Okay, that's him.
Are those guys Roman?
These are Persian. These are Persian. These are Persian. This is before like the Roman period. Okay. Achashverosh is more complicated because there isn't, again, if you're just looking for like a name that sounds the same, there isn't really a name that sounds exactly the same. Okay, that's one difficulty. Now, another difficulty is Chazal understand that Artaxerxes was a specific person, but that also, the way Chazal understand it, can be a way that at least the Tanach would refer to any Persian king. Like exactly. Like it can stand, exactly. So it can like stand in as the Artaxerxes. Okay, maybe because there was a specific great Persian king with that name. Everyone agrees to that. But because of that, Chazal understand that it could refer to other Persian kings as well. Okay, so then that's going to complicate things. So Chazal understood as follows. Chazal understood that the order is Koresh, Achashverosh, and then Daryavesh. Okay, and Artaxerxes here refers to Koresh. When we're saying we may Artaxerxes, that's actually referring to Koresh again, just by a different title. It's not a different person, Artaxerxes. Okay. Now, one other place, if you flip to Pasuk, I'm going to try to make this not any more complicated than it needs to be. Yud Daled in this same parak. Oh no, I'm sorry. Parak Vav. So see, it's good. I photocopied all the way through Parak Vav. Vav Yud Daled. So it says there. Let's read in English. The elders of the Jews progressed in the building, urged on by the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo, and they brought the building to completion under the aegis of the God of Israel, and by the order of. In the Hebrew Aramaic it says Koresh, the Daryavesh, the Artaxerxes, Melech Paras. So Chazal understand those three names as referring to one person, but actually Koresh also could be like a general name. It was the Koresh, Daryavesh, the Artaxerxes, Melech Paras, the king of Persia. Those are three titles of the same person.
Do we know why he has all the different? Does he represent his character?
The Gemara actually does learn out certain things from them, but yeah, but and also just kings, the mighty, the great, he has multiple titles. Now I want to read you what the Malbim says in that pasuk. Okay, the Malbim says as follows. It's just to highlight that's very complicated, and there are different ways of understanding this. Ladas Chazal b'Rosh Hashanah. So this is discussed in the first paragraph of Maseches Rosh Hashanah. Because the opening mission of Maseches Rosh Hashanah says there are Daled Rosh Hashanahs, there are 4 dates are considered a new year. One of them is Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim, when you count the new year of the reign of a king. So Jewish kings go by Nisan and non-Jewish kings go by Tishrei. So in that context, the Gemara is working through the different reigns and of all these different kings. So the Malbim writes as follows: Chazal Rosh Hashanah. According to Chazal in the Gemara, this is all one name or 3 names for the same person. The Chaim Pirish Rashi, Sha'artach Shasta hu Yardavesh. That Artach Shasta is the same person as Daryavesh, and just that's a royal title, Artach Shasta. The Chem Mashakasav Lamala Dalad Zayin, and similarly the pasuk in Dalad Zayin, that's the pasuk we just read, will be a May Artach Shasta. Pirish Rashi Shu Koresh. Rashi says that means a person Koresh, and that is how the Gemara presents it. Ulam Rav Zerachia Halevi. His commentary is also called the Maor, the Baal HaMaor, which appears in the back of the Gemara under the Rif. So he's an early Rishon, 13th century or so. He there comments on the Gemara. He says, "Zeh ha'ola b'yadeinu lefi medrash chachamim." This is how Chazal are interpreting it. Aval ha'pirish hanachon lefi ha'pshat, but the simple reading of the psukim is Koresh v'Daryavesh v'Artach Shasta Shlosha Melachim Hayu. There are three different kings. Koresh Hamaschil, Koresh is first, Daryavesh is next, and then Artach Shasta. And that's how, if you look up in like non-Jewish history books, that's the order they'll give you. Ukvar naflu shitos videos shonos b'minyan malchei pras ushmosam. There are many different opinions and approaches of how to put together the exact chronology of all the kings of Persia and their names. Ve'ein bazeh davar barer, and it's not clear. Okay, so that's what the Malbim says. Okay, so we'll present sort of two as we read it. It's not going to fundamentally, I think, change how we understand the book, but there will be a couple of points where we'll point out two different ways to understand the order. One, sort of the simple way, the way the Gemara is presented, and the other version, which is what the Malbim is presenting from the Baal HaMaor and what you would find in a typical history book.
So, and this may or may not be relevant. This certainly doesn't come from a translation we would normally use, but I've seen in non-Jewish translations they'll translate Achashverosh as
Xerxes. Yeah. That's what most. That's what most.
Right. So instead of Artaxerxes, they've translated it as Xerxes.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Almost looks.
Well, that's a different person. Okay, so that you reminded me. So if you follow without going through how you getting everything out of the psukim, but basically the chronology of Chazal is you have Koresh, and then Achashverosh, and then Daryavesh. Okay, that's how they read the psukim. According to the different approach, so Achashverosh is going to be after Daryavesh. Okay. Now, why is that important? So that will affect when Purim happened. Now, Daryavesh rebuilds the Beis Hamikdash. In the very beginning of Daryavesh, that's when the Jewish people build the building. Now, so many people presented, wow, then this is a really big deal. And at first glance it is, but we'll discuss it. I don't really think it makes such a big difference. So they say if you assume Achashverosh is after Daryavesh, so again, this is against how it's presented in Midrashim, that means the story of Esther took place after Daryavesh, after the Beis Hamikdash has been rebuilt. Very soon after. But after the Beis Hamikdash has been rebuilt. They say like, wow, and to some degree they're right, that casts the story in a different light, because then that means the whole story is taking place and Jewish people are in Persia after the Beis Hamikdash has been rebuilt. So like, why are they even there? And
the Caleb, why are the Caleb there?
Right. So well, again, so the Midrashim the same Midrashim that say that Achashverosh takes out the vessels. Again, those Midrashim are assuming Beis Hamikdash has not been rebuilt. But in theory, it could be the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt, and he never gave up those vessels. We saw Korah sent some vessels back, but maybe he just sent back the stuff that wasn't as nice. I mean, like the knives and the bowls. He didn't want to give back the menorah and the shofar. So according to this version, the story takes place after the Beis Hamikdash has been rebuilt. But the truth is, even if you follow the chronology of Chazal, you come to a very similar conclusion, I realize, because everyone agrees that Achashverosh is after Koresh. Everyone agrees that Achashverosh is after what we've learned so far in Ezra. So even if, let's say, the building has not been rebuilt, but it means that the first people have already moved back, and they've already built the Mizbeach, and they've already started offering karbanos on the grounds of Beis Hamikdash. Everyone's going to agree to that. Chazal also agree to that. And everyone agrees that the community is struggling, is trying to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. So you come to a similar interesting conclusion. It casts just the story in a slightly different light. That when we think about that, meaning you have Mordechai and Esther, and they're doing everything they're doing, and they're in grave danger, and Hashem saves them. But at the same time, there's a whole different, really important story taking place in and around Yerushalayim that the Jewish people are trying to rebuild Yerushalayim.
But it sort of makes sense because Haman goes to the king and says, there are these people and they're going to rebel.
You're right.
But
But again, that will make sense.
He says
They've got their own laws.
Yeah, I mean, the implication is they're not loyal, meaning, but that's, we'll see it according to either chronology, though, you can you understand that, because the difference just is, did they have the walls up yet? But everyone agrees that they've already started offering sacrifices, and they're already trying to, bring usually.
We have troubles with their neighbors.
You're right, yeah, absolutely. And we'll see parallels, because, we're gonna see they're writing the letters to the Persian king. Look at these Jewish people, right? So it's very similar to what Haman did. Meaning all these Persian kings, they're having advisors whisper in their ears, or send them letters saying, and depending on the chronology, Achashverosh could be saying, I just got a few weeks ago letters telling me that the Jewish people in Israel are causing problems. And now Haman comes and says, and now in Persia, they're, these people aren't really loyal, because their loyalties are really elsewhere. So you understand, why he was worried.
As one who hasn't been here, Haman doesn't actually specify who they are.
He doesn't say that it's the Jewish people. Okay.
That's true. He doesn't say who wants to get rid of. He just gave me the authority.
And he does have one dot that they don't follow, which is bowing to him.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so let's go back to Pasuk Zayin. Ubiyamei Artach Shasta. So we'll just note the two different chronologies at this point. According to Chazal, this is Koresh. This is during the reign of Koresh. According to the historians, this will be after Daryavish, which means we're jumping ahead 100 years. Okay? Ubiyamei Artach Shasta. Kasav, again, these people. Bishla, Mitradas, Tavel, and his associates. And they wrote a letter in Aramaic. And here's the letter. No, continue Pasuk Ches. Rachum Baal Ta'im, and it was written by Rachum, who was, they translate here as commissioner, some sort of officer. The Shimshai Safra, Shimshai, who was the scribe, the Persian scribe around in the land of Israel. Kasfu Igra Chada al Yerushalayim. They wrote a letter regarding Yerushalayim. La Artachshasta Malka, so King Artachshasta, Kanema, saying as follows. Edayin Rachum Baltaim, Vishimshai Safra, Ushar Kuvanas Hon, again, all these people. Dinaya, Vafar Sachtaya, Tarfalaye, Afar Saye, Arkavaye, Bavlae, Shushan Chaye. Some of these are for sure nationalities. Some of them might be certain other kinds of officers. Okay, let's just skip to Yud. Ushar Umaya and all other people. Di Hagli Asnapar Rabav Yakira, that had been exiled by this Assyrian king, the great and honorable. The Hosev Himo Bikirya Di Shamrayan, and they settled us in the Shomron. Ushar Avar Nahara Uche'enet, and in other places beyond the river. Dina Parshegan Igarta Dishlachu Alohi. This is the letter that we are sending. Al Artach Shasta Malka, to again King Artach Shasta. Avadayach, your servants. Enash Avar Nahara Uche'enet. Again, the people of the other side of the river and beyond, let's say. Okay, what's the letter? Finally, the letter hasn't really begun yet. Yedia leheve lemalka. it should be known to the king. Can people sort of, some of the words you can sort of follow the Hebrew, right? But okay. Di Yehudaye, the Jewish people, Di Sliku min livatach alena atol Yushalayim, who left you and have come up to Yushalayim, Kiryasa, where like where does that come from? Like city, like yeah, okay. So the city, which is Maradata, a rebellious city, Uvishtan, just a bad city. Banin, they are building. Vishuraya, Shachlilu, Vushaya, Yachitu. And they are finishing the walls and repairing the foundation, it says. I had to check for that one. Ka'an Yedi'ah leheve lemalka, let it be known to the king. Dihain Kiryasadach, this city, again, Kirya means city. Tit B'nei, it's being built. Vishuraya Yishtach Lelun, and the walls are being completed. Or if that will happen, Minda Velo V'halach, from now and onwards, La Yit Nanun, they will not give you, meaning any of the taxes, the Apton Malkin Tehanzik, and the king will be damaged, like Nezek. Ka'an Kol Kabel, and because of all of this, Di Melach Hechla Malachna, we salt the salt of the palace. What does that seem to be referred to? There would be some kind of ceremony of like a salt covenant. You know, there's even a pasuk in the Torah, like bris melach. So it's about like some like everlasting covenant. You know, they would use some salt somehow. So they're saying we are eternally, you know, loyal to you, king. We are a member of the salt covenant to you. The arvas malka lo arichla na lemechazeh, and we do not want to see, you know, the embarrassment of the king. Al dina shalachna, so therefore we are sending this to you. V'hodana lemalka, and we are letting it be known to the king. And therefore, di yivakar bisfar dachranaya, if you will check in the books of Aramaic from Hebrew, Zions become Dalids. What? Right, exactly. So Zikaron. If you will check the books of remembrance, you know, you're at the, right, exactly, yeah. Okay. Di avahatach, of your fathers. Uta hashkach, you will find bisfar dachranaya, in the book of the Chronicles or the Remembrances. Vitinda, and you will know di kiryasadach, that this city, Kirya Marada Umehan Zakat Malkin, it is a rebellious city, and it they fight kings. Umedinan, and states like Medinot. The Eshtador Avdin Bigava Min Yomat Alma, and they have been rebelling from Yimot Olam forever. Al Dina Kiryata Dach Hacharvat. And this is why the city was destroyed. I mean, the whole reason why Yerushalayim is in ruins right now is because they were rebelling and they wouldn't accept Babylonian rule. Okay, so let's keep going a little bit. I hope there makes that too painful. It's okay? Okay. Mahodin anachna l'malcha, therefore we are letting it be known to the king. Dihen kiryasadach titbanei, the city is being rebuilt. Vishuraya yishtach lelun, and the walls are being finished. Lakabel dina chalak bavar naharach, and therefore this whole area beyond the river, lo isilach, will not be to you if you let them do this. Pitgama shalach, so end of letter. That's the end of the letter. Okay. So they're saying, you know, Artach Shasta, you have to do something. If you don't do something, they're going to build up the city. They're going to finish the walls, and then they're going to say goodbye. We're no longer paying taxes. You know, we're independent. Now, okay. Any thoughts, questions, or comments? Yeah.
I'd have to look through to find them, but there are a number of places where if one changes a dollar to a Zion, it looks at more Hebrew version of the word. It's almost
Yeah, in Aramaic, Zion, from Hebrew to Aramaic, Zions become Dalits.
Sometimes, but not all. But some of them, but this almost looks like a divine indictment in a sense, saying of the Jewish people saying, because of the fact that you rebelled against me, says God, I am going to increase your suffering even more.
Okay, I mean, again, it's about rebelling against, human kings, but
Right, but it was also irony because they weren't rebelling against human kings; they were rebelling against the King of Kings, and that's why all this happened.
Okay, interesting.
But this is exactly what Pharaoh said also. He said they're going to leave, they're going to be no longer part of Egypt.
Yeah,
Right.
I hear it. That is very similar. Now, the Meforshim point out, so what is he saying, what do they keep saying they're building? What's the great fear? The walls of the city, right? They're building the city and the walls of the city. Okay, so we're going to come back again to our two chronologies. So the problem or the issue is, but at least in the days of Koresh, they're not up to that yet. And we'll see it's clear from the later psukim. They haven't built the base of Mikdash yet. It's clear that they first build the base of Mikdash, then once the base of Mikdash is built, then they start trying to rebuild the whole city and build the walls of the city. So if you assume this is really like fast forwarding 100 years from now, and the reason why it's here is, let's say, to give an example of the letter, because let's say when Ezra, again, we haven't met yet Ezra, right? Ezra's going to come later. So when Ezra and the Anshe Knesset Gedola and they're writing this book, so it says, and you should know, in the days of our Tach Shasta, we're letting you know this is 100 years from now, from where we are. This is an example. We still have this letter. So, to give a taste of what these letters were, because they didn't have, let's say, the original letters. So that would be the reason why, if this is really what played out 100 years later, and why they're talking about the walls of the city, they're not talking about the base of English. The base of English is up and running. The issue is now they're starting to build the walls, which is getting them scared.
And once they have the walls, they can keep everyone out.
Exactly. Yeah. Then they can defend themselves. Exactly. So if you assume this is taking place later, that makes sense. If you assume it's taking place earlier, so the Malbim writes, you have to say that basically they were lying, that they weren't anywhere near getting the walls ready. But these people around Yerushalayim were already upset. They're building an altar and starting to build their temple. But they knew if they told Koresh they're building their temple, it wouldn't really bother him. In fact, he was one who had said, I grant them permission to build their temple. So they sent back a letter, which wasn't really true, saying they're building, or they're getting ready to build the walls. So you said temple, but they're building the walls. Maybe, okay, maybe, yeah. No, it definitely would take some time. Yeah, if they're writing, right.
The next thing they're going to do.
Exactly. So that's why, okay, right. So those are the two ways to read these psukim. Okay, so this is the letter that they sent to Artach Shasta. Okay, so let's continue with Pasuk Yud Zayin. So Pitgama Shalach Malka Al Rechum Baal Te'em V'Shimshai Safran. And now this is the letter that the king sent back to these officers, Ushar Kinavas Hon Di Yasvin Bishamrin, and their associates. We'll learn a little Aramaic. In Aramaic, Zions become Dalids, and Shins become Tufs. So Yasvin is like Yoshvin, who were living in Shomron, and beyond the river. Okay, so I'll skip Yud Ches. They wrote the letter, and it's read in front of them. And what does it say? Pasuk Yud Tet. Umini sim te'em. And from before me, I issued a decree, uvakaru, and they investigated, v'hashkachu, and they found, di kiryasa, dach, minyomas alma, that you're right, this city from days of old, al malkin, misnasa, they, rise themselves up against kings, umarad, v'ishtador mitavidba, and rebellion and sedition, they do. Okay, you're right. Umalkin takifin havu al Yerushalayim, and there were some very powerful kings on Yerushalayim, meaning Jewish kings. Vishalitin b'chol avar nahara, who ruled a great area beyond the river. Umida vilo v'halach. These are the three kinds of taxes. I don't know if we know for sure, but they try to tribute, poll tax, land tax, and all the taxes mityahev lahon they would collect. You're right. I looked. It's not only would they not pay these taxes in other nations, they were the powerful nations that were collecting the taxes. Ka'an simu te'aim, and therefore I issue a decree, levatala guvraya ilech, that you are to stop these people. The Kirya Sadach lo titbene ad mini taima yitzam, and this city should not be rebuilt until I issue a decree that it may be rebuilt. Uzihirin havu shalu lemavad al dana. Be very careful. Make sure you do this. Lema yiske chavala lahanzakat malkin. Make sure to prevent any, injury or damage to the king. Edayin, and therefore at that time, Mindi Parshagan Nishtevana Artachshasta Malka, when this letter of Artachshasta Malka, Kari was read, Kadam Rachum Vishimshai, Safrat Ukevanas Hon, in front of the Persian officers, whoever these people are in around Israel. Azalu, Bifilu, they quickly went to Yerushalayim, Al Yehudaye, to Yehuda, the Jewish community, Uvatelu Himo Be'edra V'chayel, and they immediately stopped them. Again, we're becoming experts in Aramaic. Edra, so if you switch the dal to a zayin, it was like zroa, like zroa into you, like with outstretched arm, meaning, and they forcibly stopped them from building. Okay, let's read one more pasuk. Beidayin, and therefore, or at that time, Bitelat Ividat Beit Elaka Dibushalayim. It was stopped, the work. Now we're switching back to the Beis Hamikdash. See how it's, right? That the work of the Beis Hamikdash was stopped. Vahavat batla ad shnat tartain l'malchus Daryavish melech Paras. And it was stopped until the second year of the reign of Daryavish. Okay? Now again, Chazal seem to assume the order of the Pesukim is the correct chronological order. So that's why they assume, if you read it in order, this whole Artachshasta story is happening before Daryavish. So they thought, Artachshasta must be the royal name for Koresh. And the others would interpret that, again, no, this whole letter is sort of like in brackets. It's saying, and this is an example of such a letter that happened 100 years later. And therefore, in the days of Koresh, similar letters were sent. It was a real letter. The question just is, when did it take place? Meaning, is it in the same time as when we're talking, or again, it's later? Yeah.
Were there two Ahasuerus that we discussed? That there were 1 and 2, and is it possible that we're confused about?
Again, at least according to, if you're going to follow the general historians, both of those, I think there's Xerxes 1 and Xerxes 2. Assuming Ahasuerus means Xerxes, those are both still after Daryavish. It wouldn't solve anything.
Well, but if we say that according to Chazal, that Daryavish came after Achashverosh, then why couldn't Artachshasta be Achashverosh? Because this fickleness that we see in the wording that's used kind of reminds me of Achashverosh.
I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why Chazal say Artachshasta has to be Koresh and not.
Sure. If it was a general name for a king, the emperor.
Yeah, it could be. I'm sure you have to. The Chazal are fitting together the many more Pesukim in Ezra, Pesukim in other books. You have to. There are a lot of pieces that it's like a puzzle. So you have to fit them all together. So, okay. Any other questions? Okay, so let's begin Perek A. I think we're just going to begin Perek A, and then we'll have to continue next time. Yeah.
One other question, and this happens in Daniel as well, that there's a mention of Aramaic, and then the book just continues in Aramaic, even though they're done with the letters. Why can they switch back?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We are going to continue now in Aramaic, but there are also going to be more letters. So I guess as long as they wanted to have the letters in the original, the few psukim in between, they kept it. Yeah.
Do we know that the book of Ezra was written by Ezra?
We can see what the Gemara. I think
because he was very big about restoring Hebrew language. So you would think that he would push his own agenda and write in Hebrew whenever he got the chance.
I hear.
If he's replicating a letter, he's going to be faithful to the original language. But maybe he just wanted to write as much Hebrew as he could, you know?
Right, you would think. But again, so there is a little bit in Aramaic beyond the letters. Again, they're going to be the psukim that are around letters. So maybe they just didn't want to keep changing back and forth. I'm not sure. It's a good question. I really don't know. Okay, so right now what's happened? Forgetting exactly when the letter took place, but they've stopped building the base of Mikdash. So they had gotten the Mizbeach up. I assume they're still offering sacrifices. I don't see why it doesn't say they stopped doing that, but they can't really get it together. They can't build the base of Mikdash, and again, they're just struggling in general. There are other people there who are pressuring them and not letting them develop their independent community. Yeah.
So the letter says the walls of the city, though. It doesn't refer specifically to the temple.
You're then in the letter, right? But then this last passage says, and therefore they had to stop working, and it's going to be clear. They stopped.
All right.
There's a big delay, 18 years that they just they have an altar up there, but other than that, it's in ruins on top of the Temple Mount.
It's like big dick
Right.
on hold. Indefinite.
I hear. Okay.
Until such.
That predates me, but yeah.
Why do these people are so concerned about what the Jews are doing? Like, are these people our enemies?
They're enemies. The simple reason is that if the Jewish people would build a base of Mikdash and strengthen their community, then they would be in charge. And they don't want the Jewish people to be in charge. They want to be in charge, or they want no one to be in charge. But
And so they know a lot about, it seems like they evidently know a lot about the Jewish people. I mean, they're aware of what they're doing. To be,
yeah, they're all living there. Yeah,
I'm just curious, like, why they have such a vendetta against the Jewish people. You know what I'm saying?
I think it was just they didn't want the Jewish people to become the
More powerful than that,
exactly.
everyone else, so-
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was curious.
Yeah.
But when the Koresh sent all these other people back to their lands, well, maybe they didn't go back and only the Jews went back.
Well, I think he sent more the people who are in Persia back to their lands. But I guess if there were people resettled in other foreign lands, even if he was sort of ruling over it, maybe those people, he didn't move back as much. And again, he sent people back, but that just means he gave them permission to move back, right? Not most of the Jewish people didn't go back either. So these other nations, that maybe they wanted to stay, in Yehuda. Okay. So let's begin Parakeh. So we're still in Aramaic. V'hit nabi Chagai nivaya uZachariah bar Ido. So Chagai and Zachariah, they begin declaring prophecies. Nivaya al Yehuda, the prophets of Yehuda, or of the Jewish people. Di Yehuda b'Yushalayim, who are in Yehuda and Yerushalayim. B'Shem Elaka, or that's like the name of Hashem. The name of Hashem, Yisrael, the God of Israel, Aleihom, regarding them, meaning regarding the Jewish people. They die, and so they start. Chag and Zechariah get up and they're declaring prophecies. It doesn't say here what the prophecies are. Beidayin Kamuz Rubavel bar Shaltiel, and therefore at that time, with the encouragement of Chagai and Zechariah, Zerubbabel, the Yeshua bar Yotzadak, Yoshua, the first Kohen Gadol, we've met these people, the Sharav and the other officers, Lemivnei Beit Elaka Dibu Shalem. They start building the base of Mikdash. V'imhon v'aya di Elaka Misadin Lahon, with the prophets and with the help of Hashem. Now we're going to see very soon. So this is now going to be 18 years later. And again, the other people are living there. They're going to say, what are you doing? Wait a second. They suddenly go up and start building. Okay. But before we get to that reaction, so we'll see a little bit the nevuahs of Chagai and Zechariah. What were they saying? You have a question? Okay. So let's skip to after the third page 4. Okay. We'll see some brief passages from Chagai and Zechariah, and we'll have to continue next time. So Chagai begins. This is the very beginning of the book of Chagai. Chagai is only 2 prakim. V'shnashtayim l'Daryavesh Hamelech, who was in the 2nd year of the reign of Daryavesh. B'chodesh hashishi b'yom echad l'chodesh. So what's the date?
First of Sivan. Oh no, wait.
First
Yom
of Elul.
Shishi. Oh, Elul.
Elul, the first Rosh Chodesh Elul. Hayadvar Hashem biad Chagai Hanavi El Zerubbabel ben Shaltiel Pachas Yehuda. There a prophecy came to Chagai the prophet, meaning regarding Zerubbabel, who was Pachas Yehuda, the leader, the political leader of Yehuda. Del Yoshua ben Yosadek HaKohen HaGadol Lemor, and regarding Yoshua the Kohen Gadol. Ko Amar Hashem Svakos Lemor. This is what Hashem says. Hamazamru, this people, they say, lo eight bo. It's not the time for us to come. Eight bayit beit Hashem libanos. It's not. We shouldn't be building the base of Mikdash now. It's not a good time. The enemies are, it's not a good time. Vayidvar Hashem bi'ad Chagai hanavi lemor. But Hashem spoke to Chagai saying, and he was to declare this to the Jewish people. Ha'eit lachem atem lashevet bevateichem sfunim. Is it the time for you to live in your houses that is paneled with wood, with fine wood? V'habayit hazeh charev, and this house, the base of Mikdash, is destroyed. Ko amar Hashem tzva'akos. This is what Hashem says. Simu levavchem al darcheichem. Think about what you're doing. Alu hahar. Go up to the mountain. V'haveitem eitz, and bring some wood. Ubinu abayit, and build the house. Ve'ertzabo, and I will be appeased by it. I'll find pleasure in it. Ve'kavda, and I will be honored by it. Amar Hashem, Hashem says. It's time. Go build it. You're saying it's not the right time. You should build it. Okay. Do they listen initially? No, they're not going to listen initially. Pretty soon, but it's going to take a few warnings. Okay. So one point for those who are here, I think this relates to the second class. He tells them, go get some wood and go up the mountain and build it. Okay. Any reflections on that?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. The wood for that Kedah. Okay, but from the beginning of Ezra, what did they originally want to do? How did they originally want to build it?
Trying to get wood from Lebanon.
Right, they were trying to get the most fanciest wood from Lebanon, like the first base of Mikdash was going to be shipped in special to the Yaffo port, the pasuk says,
Right.
and that's how they assumed that they needed to do. And there was no way for them to do. Meaning, they would have been stopped. They couldn't have this massive building project. So one of the things Chagai is saying, and there's other prophets Chagai about this, and he was basically telling them, at least for now, Hashem doesn't want you to build the most beautiful base of Mikdash with the most expensive wood. He's just right. Just go get some wood and go up the mountain and build it. Exactly.
Rabbi,
And he's also saying, don't be afraid of the people.
isn't it called like Herod's temple? Who is Herod?
That's a Jewish king in the Roman period who rebuilt, remodeled and made the base of Mikdash, incredibly beautiful.
After they had
This,
built
yeah.
the bare essentials.
Yeah, that's going to be like a couple hundred years from now, 300 years from now. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's see the next source. Now this is Zechariah. B'chodesh Hashmini, it was now the 8th month. So that is Cheshvan, 2 months later. B'shna shtayim l'Dar Yabesh, again the same year, the second year of Daryabesh's reign. Hayadvar Hashem al Zechariah ben Barachia bar Ido Hanavi Lemor. So Hashem came to Zechariah. Katzaf Hashem al avosechem katzef. Your Hashem became mad at your forefathers. Presumably that means, and he exiled you, destroyed the base of Mikdash. V'amarta ale, I think there's a mistake here. I think it should be v'amarta alechem with a chav. But you should go and say to the Jewish people, to them, or alehem, it should be, v'amarta alehem, ko amar Hashem tzva'akos. This is what Hashem says. Shuvu elai, come back to me. Num Hashem tzva'akos, says God. V'ashuv alechem, I will return to you, amar Hashem tzva'akos. Al tiyu kabosechem. Don't be like your forefathers. Asher karu alehem hanaviim harishonim, that the first prophets called out to them, Lemor, Ko amar Hashem tzva'akos, Shuvu na midarcheichem ha'ra'im, repent from your evil ways. V'lo shamu, v'lo akshuvu elai. They didn't listen to the prophets. Don't be like your forefathers who didn't listen to the prophets. Listen to the prophets.
Could this literally be fathers, as in like
You're right.
18
You're right.
years have passed, and
Interesting.
so now you're sort of the next generation.
Right. I thought you were going to even just say again, it could have been their fathers who were there at in the generation of the Chorban also. But
it says
but maybe
prophets, meaning it was probably still the same prophets in that
like
area.
Yirmiyahu, the prophets of the first temple. Right? So he's saying, listen to the prophets. Meaning, so what prophets is he referring to? Chagai, meaning they haven't done it yet. And he's saying, you already, learned the lesson of what happens when you don't listen to the prophets. You have to listen to the prophets.
Are there other times when we have multiple prophets at the same time, in the same period, speaking?
Yeah, for sure. But I'm not sure if you have as much sort of like do you have as much interactions between different like as recorded in Tanach? And I'm not sure, I would say it is true, they are presented as as a team more than other Nevi'im, right? Meaning, even like we've seen, then it was with Chag and Zachariah and so forth. But there definitely were, there will be multiple prophets, yeah. Okay, so let's see the last source, and we'll stop for tonight. This is from Chagai Perek Bet. The Esrim va'arba'a lachi'i, and it was now the 24th day of the 9th month, Kislev. So it's for us, Erev Hanukkah. Hanukkah hasn't happened yet, right? But we'll see many people see that there is significance to this in relation to Hanukkah. So it's the 24th day of Kislev, V'shas shtayim l'der yavesh. So now, so this is like about 1 month later. When the Zachariah was in Cheshvan, now it's Kislev. Hayadvar Hashem el Chagai and Avi Amor. Again, we're back to Chagai. Now, again, a message is given to Chagai. And more El Zerubbabel Pachas Yehuda Lemor. Go tell Zerubbabel, who again was the sort of political leader. Ani Marish et Hashemayim et Aretz. I will make the heavens and earth shake. Va'afachti kisei mamlachos. I will overturn the thrones of kingdoms. The Hishmanati chozek mamlachos hagoyim. I will destroy the power of the other nations. Va'afachti merkava v'rochveha. I will flip over any chariot with its riders. The Yardu Susim, the Rochvehem, and horses and their riders will fall down. That's very much sounds like, the Shiraz Yashir. Ish Becharav Achiv, and a man will fall by the sword of his fellow. I mean, again, basically, don't stop being afraid of the other nations and the other people. Vayomahu Ne'um Hashem Svakos. And it'll be on that day, Hashem says, Ekachacha Zerubbabel ben Shaltiel Abdi, I will take you, Zerubbabel, to be my servant, Ne'um Hashem. V'samticha kachosem, I will make you like a seal. I'm not sure, something like precious and special, and protect you. Ki v'cha bacharti, Ne'um Hashem Svakos, because I've chosen you. I've chosen you to be the one who will rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. And then the Psukim continue that, and then they did. That's when they started rebuilding the Beis HaMikdash. So let's say if it's reasonable that this message was delivered on the 24th, and it says, and then they started, so let's say it's reasonable to say, let's say they started the next day. So it means they started building the first Beis HaMikdash on the 25th of Kislev. The second Beis HaMikdash,
Yeah.
right, originally building it. So again, it just, then the date becomes obviously very significant. And then, for Hanukkah, which is sort of like the rededication of the Beis HaMikdash, I mean, after the Greeks defiled it, it fits very nicely because it's they're rededicating the second Beis HaMikdash. It was built, or the building began. We'll see. It's going to take some months to build it, but the building began, and that was sort of when they decided we are building this. Was on the 25th of
But
Kislev.
didn't actually Hanukkah happen during Sukkot, and we only celebrated?
Very good. Right, so there
Kislev?
are some sources. So exactly, so this would be one of the reasons why, if you assume that sort of that date was chosen to be the day of the rededication.
To be the commemorative day.
So it makes sense why they would choose that day, because it was a day of.
But that was the Yontif of Hanukkah. It wasn't like when Esther sent the letter, and then like Purim became obligatory for the Jews, presumably after Esther sent the letter out, and then from that, it says in the Megillah, it says from that day on, the Jews celebrated Purim. But Hanukkah, I mean, it may not the Chag of Hanukkah or whatever may not have started right away. It may have been like a couple of years, or I mean, we don't
so
know.
in Al Nisim itself, it says they didn't do it, I think, till the next year, right?
The next year, so then they chose like the 25th day of Kislev to mark that holiday, or.
Well, that's when they rededicated. That's when they rededicated after.
But I thought it was in Sukkot that they actually went in and.
But I think it means that was when the war was, and then again it took them some time to get everything in order.
Is it possible, whether or not they actually rededicated the Beit HaMikdash on Hanukkah exactly on that date? Maybe it's because this date was a significant date, because this is when they first.
Well, I would say that's why they would choose to rededicate it on that date, because it was a significant date.
But no, they didn't choose. It was an urgency that they had to light the menorah. That was like the first thing they did, and they didn't want to wait 8 days. It wasn't like they had time to sit around and choose a day. There's an urgency that they had to light the menorah. That was the miracle.
But that might not have been the actual official rededication.
So according to, I found a Siddur that had Megillat HaMaccabim in it. And it says that it says in there, now of course I don't know how accurate this is, but it says in there that they captured it and they rededicated it by lighting the menorah on Kafeh Kislev.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we get to the Rosh
That would
Hashanah,
fit.
but either way, it definitely is very appropriate.
Yeah.
It should be on the same date.
I don't know where I heard about Sukkot. I mean, maybe I'm mistaken.
I think it's in the book of Maccabees.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we'll stop here, but again, if anyone has any further questions.